right. Hey, welcome back to the Jeff Hagee Show. Today, I'm excited to have Neil Rogers with me. Neil has been an entrepreneur and author. As we get into this, you'll see he's been many things. He had the opportunity during the pandemic to write a book and reflect back on his past and some of the things that brought success into his life. And it goes way back to some early experiences, which I love how he's gone into this. But Neil, welcome to the show, and just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me. This is great. Well, I'm a product of just outside of Boston, so if you see some dropped R's, that'll show up. I do live I live over the border in New Hampshire, but Massachusetts is right there, so
Okay.
right over the border. But I grew up in a household of 8 of a Irish Catholic family, seventh of 8. Not too much attention being paid at that point in terms of the discipline was still there, but the first 4 in the group were brought up in very Gestapo like Irish Catholic terms. So no fish on Fridays, mass every Sunday, holy days of obligation. You go to hell if you do this, you go to hell if you don't do that. And they had to suffer through parochial school, systematic discipline, and still have got scars from it to this day. And I walk with one of my older brothers quite often. He's about 74, and there isn't a walk that we go on there where something isn't brought up from those days. So I kind of escaped that, but I was an average student, nothing. As I say, when I graduated high school, my SAT scores and my class rank had one thing in common: they were both in the triple digits. So so in my senior year, I'm 17 years old. So I went to my mother in May and asked her is there something I should be doing next year? It's not like it is today where we've mapped out our kids' plan from DNA right up until they're into their college years, and then beyond. In some cases, it seems like we never really truly let go these days. Where back when I grew up, it was don't let the screen door hit you on the way out. It's time to move on. And so I didn't have a path. I had no real passion for something. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't have an aim, and so I went. So I did the college thing. I went to a community college and failed. Had again no passion, no drive, and it was like high school all over again. It wasn't. I didn't do awful the first semester, but the second semester I just lost interest, and that was the end of that. But all the while, I stayed in the hospitality business. I had been working, even as a 14-year-old kid, I washed dishes. But I was working in a place in Boston with friends, and we worked in the kitchen. So we washed dishes, made sandwiches, then got out to be a busboy, right? So I'm out in the floor. I'm out front now. And so then from there, I started a bar back. So bar backing, it should say back break because it's back breaking work. They're the unheralded guys behind the bar. The guys that always say to you, "Oh no, I'm not the bartender. You'll have to talk to him." That's the bar back. So,
Okay.
but as I'm doing this, right, we made okay money. They don't tip them out like they do today, where they could. When I was working, we tipped out our bar backs really well. But I was watching them, how the bartenders, how they worked, and to me it just looked really cool. So that was my first passion for the job. Was it just looked cool? So I set my sights. So after failing, with my self-esteem pretty low, I set sights on getting a bar job. And my friend and I that worked with me at that restaurant, we had started to do private parties. So we had some experience. We knew, we knew drinks, we knew this, we knew that. So we could, we could at least fake it till we make it, right? So I set my sights on it, and there was a place called the Full Sail, which I mentioned in the book is the first bar I ever worked at. I was 19 years old at this point, so this is a couple of years in after high school. I turned 18 November of my senior year, and so I went up to the guy that I knew, and from growing up, he was probably, I think Peter is probably 6 or 7 years older than me, and I said, hey, could I have a bar job? He said, well, they're all taken up, but I'll get you 5 nights on the door. So I'm back checking IDs, getting ice, taking out trash, all that stuff that I knew so well. And so so the day bartender says, I don't want the job. He says, do you want it? I said, I'll take it. So that's where it kind of started, and where the aha moment came when, again, I'm still in this bad place of failing and not still directionless and all that. But I got the job, so that I set my sights on that. I got it, so I had a goal and I achieved it. And the first drink that I poured was a sea breeze. So sea breeze is not that popular these days, but it's vodka, grapefruit, and a splash of cranberry juice with a lime. So I made the drink, put it in front of the woman. She took a sip out of it. She goes, boy, that's good. So I got that immediate feedback and that love right there. And it was like, now I started thinking, okay. And then I started to really use my personal skills to talk to people, to work with them, introduce them to others. Hey, do you play darts? Come on over, let's play a game of darts, whatever that may be. Hey, we're going here after we close. Why don't you come with us? That type of stuff. And I kind of, it was just that I found that my calling was that I like to serve, that I enjoyed that immediate feedback. She was looking for something, I was able to provide it for her. It wasn't really, I wouldn't call it a pain point that she needed the sea breeze, but in some way, shape, or form, it's the beginning of the sales process, right? So from there, I really started working a lot at this place, and really developed my interpersonal skills. Came out, started to feel like, and I had the physical attributes to do the job well, because I've got very quick, at least at the time, I had very quick hands. So pouring drinks fast was an important aspect of it, along with the interpersonal aspect of it. So but then I decided, okay, so this is my path. Let's go to hotel restaurant school. So I go to hotel restaurant school, swing and a miss, number two. And again, part of it was, I was probably distracted, put it mildly. And but also, I also realized that I didn't want to be in the restaurant business the rest of my life. And I said, I don't want to work. I had this hat in my head. I don't want to work weekends for the rest of my life in order to make a living. So, and by the way, I bow to anybody that does. It's hard work. And people that are good at it are really good at it. So I was talking about, what do I do next? So people would say to me, Neil, with your personality, you're into the way that you work with people and whatnot, you might want to consider sales. Okay, that sounds good. Now, what do I do? Now I've got to go back. I still have got to complete, at least back then, I don't completely believe in it now, but back then you had to get that degree in order to move on. So how am I going to do this? So round 3, I go back to school, but now here's the difference. I have a purpose. I have a passion. I believe I can be good at something, right? And so I went back to school and realized this is where I started with my process, right? So I talk a lot about process in the book, algorithm in today's parlance, right? And so I discovered they like you to show up. There's one. How about you listen and actively listen? Maybe take some notes. If they put a number up on the board or an office number, be sure to stop by and do the extra work. Be noticed. Answer questions in class, right, wrong, or indifferent. Participate. And I went from a flunked out student to a 3.85 student. So, I mean, I can't brag about my kids, and you know one of them. He's a 4.0 student, so they still people. But but anyway, so that kind of got me on the path with that. And so I wound up finishing up. I stayed in the bar. I stayed behind the bar to pay for school. I was a commuter student. So really, to this day, those people that I know from that business, that's my fraternity. Those are the people that I kind of grew up with. They were a lot of them were students and very successful and doing the straight way to do it, not the curvy way I was doing. So I finished up school, did finalize that, and I got my first sales job in the food business. And so I went selling from a distributor to restaurants and hotels. And it was, and that's where I kind of started to really develop my organizational skills, because it was when you're calling on chefs that don't want to talk to you, and they certainly don't want to talk to the new kid, you better be prepared. So you come in, and so I did the simple things, and again, what people will find out in the book, none of this, zero, is complex marketing there. It's how organized are you? How well can you present? How have you prepared? That'll come shining through, and when you're making your calls. So I would go in. I had all the meats, the meat prices, the fish prices, the commodity type stuff, the stuff that would change daily, and produce prices right there. Any specials, anything. And also, because I am a commissioned salesman, I knew where the spiffs were coming. You know, if I'm getting $1 case on 14-ounce bottle ketchup, which, by the way, the stock number is 028092, haven't sold that in 37 years, right? Sugar packets, whatever that may be, you're not going to oversell them, but you're going to ask the question, how are you on 14-ounce bottle ketchup? Heinz.
Right.
Oh yeah, I need 12 cases. Great. There's $12 that went into my pocket. And early on in those days, I made more money on spiffs than I was making on commissions, because I was organized in that fashion. So that's one of the. So if we go bounce back and forth between the book along the way, second tip, the first couple of chapters are kind of memoirish, like I talked about my upbringing. Yeah. And the reason for that is, and the reason why I tell my story is because, there's a bunch of us in the middle of the road out there, right? That may be rudderless, probably not as rudderless as I was, because we have so much more parent involvement these days, especially those that are going off to college. But, it talks about growing up in a big family, kind of getting lost in the sauce, not having really classic IQ academic intelligence. But what I found out I had, I don't know if you've ever heard of Howard Gardner and the Frames of Mind, but he talks about the 7 types of intelligence. And 2 of them, that I think I'm pretty high on, and that is interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence, self-awareness. Then I've got a little bit of musical intelligence. I've got some academic intelligence. So it's kind of a broad. So when I talk to kids and I mentor them in this fashion, you have gifts, you've learned things, things. There's innate stuff in you. There's stuff you picked up off the ground. You just got to use it. Things that, oh, by the way, your parents might have told you that you really should listen to, at least a little bit. Give it a cursory look, right? So, and then it goes into some research. Third chapter is some research I did on other businesses and how they engage their clients using hospitality means. And then I start getting into the tips which really are the importance of a proper greeting. How do you say hello? And this one isn't in the book, but actually, I go back and I reread it and I study it and this, that, and the other thing. I always come up with a new one, and the one that I came up with and now is, I don't know where are you, Jeff? Where do you live?
Arizona.
Arizona. So do you remember when Home Depot came to town?
Right. Yeah.
Right. You walked into Home Depot. There's a sea of people with orange aprons ready to help you. What are you doing? How's your product? What do you got? Wow. Let me take you there. Bring you. They take you to the aisle. They show you the good, the better, the best. Tell me about your budget. Ask you questions. And you've had this positive experience. Now, they hide on you. So guess what happens? I go to the local guy. And when I walk in the door, how you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? Let me take you right there. I'm not a big DIY guy. When I live townhome living in both places now. So I don't get involved in anything. Not that I did a lot of it to begin with, but I can get everything I need at places that are smaller that will take care of me. Matter of fact, I always tell a story. I had to get some paint. This guy went through the whole process of the paint. He mixed it. He told me about it, this thing. I saw him out at a sandwich shop that I go to all the time. I looked at him and said, "You're the paint guy at Beltates, aren't you?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "That was unbelievable service. Thanks again." Right? So then we move on. We're talking about organization. The second tip chapter is, the most organized wins. And that's what I really feel. And one of my old bosses back when I got into the sporting goods business says, money is made on Saturday mornings. That's where you do your organization. You make sure that your samples are right. That your materials are correct. You've washed your car, you vacuumed it, you feel good, right? And so, and your materials are in your car. I was back in those days, I was a road sales guy in my car all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
How's your car look? How's your materials? Are you going to go into a store or into a restaurant and go, I haven't got my stuff. I'll send it to you. Now, that's not egregious. Nobody bats 1,000, but it'd be better if it was in the car or in your briefcase. Primarily in your briefcase. Make sure you picked out all the stuff. You walk in, this is that, and don't overload them either, because nobody wants to get. That was the old way of spamming. Just overload them with catalogs and stuff. So, but that's important there. And so I would suggest my biggest triumph in organization was when I left the food business, and I just started to make money. I was still working the bar on the weekends. My wife and I got married. That was the end of the bar business. Never poured a drink behind the bar until my 60th year. I went back and reprised my role at one of my bars, because I called the guy up and I said, "Are you coming to my party?" He says, "No, but one of our bartender buddies that worked with me back in the day, he's having a party here tomorrow night." And I told him, if this is some veiled attempt to get back behind the bar, you can come anytime. He says, "I will if Neil will." And I said, "I'll be down tomorrow night." And we had a blast. But anyways, these guys that I knew, again, back to where that Full Sail bar was in White Horse Beach. They were a little bit older than me, but we spent a lot of time together. They were in the athletic footwear and apparel business, and They were doing very well. And they were manufacturers reps, commission only. So I was doing pretty well. I had a car, I had insurance, I got all that Benny stuff, and my wife was working at Fidelity. But but again, much like I felt in the hospitality business, I could see the end game. I could see there was a cap on this. You just couldn't work hard enough to make real money. So he came and he brought my wedding gift to me, and he said, by the way, we'd like to offer you a job. It's like, so I said to my wife, all right, it's decision time. We're going from making this, whatever that was, to this. But I had just achieved a lot of success and growing that food business. It went from, I think it was 150,000 for the year. I brought it to 1,500,000. Right. So it was great growth, but the commission wasn't like commensurate with, with the effort, I thought. And so, but that was showing up much like in the school gig, showing up, actively listening. What are your needs? Let me help you. Being all those simple things that we talked about in the book. And so, so the day ends in the food business. So I said, yes. Well, Lori and I discussed it. We said yes. And I took the day ends in the food business at 2:30 because you got to get your deliveries the next day. You don't get your orders in by 2:30. So what typically would happen after 2:30 would be prospecting, follow up, people that didn't need the orders the next day, which there was few and far between. So I had this time. So I got all my stuff delivered to me prior, all my samples, all my materials, all my accounts that I was going to get, that I was getting transferred over me in the sporting goods business. And I mapped it out. I took blank maps, mapped out the whole territory, right? Just wrote them in. I had never done this type of travel yet. So, so it's all in most of New England. And so I wanted to be organized, right? I profess it. And so I mapped them all out. I got all my samples together. I listened to the people that brought me on, what to do, how to organize them, how to lace them, the shoes and whatnot, all the proper things to do, what bags to get. So you have access to them easily enough when you come in and make a presentation. So on day one, I was ready to make phone calls and start setting appointments. I was ready to go. And it's one of those things. I just recently, my sister-in-law is leaving her job to help her husband build out a new kitchen and bath business in their new home. They moved to North Carolina. They were in the DC area. I said, map out 90 days, make sure, if you can keep your job and do a couple of hours at night so you get your money keep coming in, I would suggest you do that. Because then you're not sitting there at zero wondering when the heck are we going to get paid, right? So at least it's zero and you're still organizing and trying to figure out where you're going, what you're going to do and all that. You're behind the 8 ball and it gets in your head. How am I ever going to do this? Why did I do this? Why did I leave that job? Right. So I was prepared and I was ready to go. And I just, again, showed up, was nice, non-intrusive. I had products that were good, but the shoes, this is in Nike, Reebok, LA Gear days. I mean, Nike and Reebok, I don't think Reebok is as hot as they were then, but nobody wanted the shoes. But we had price points and ways that we could position the products that would make the retailer money. That there wasn't going to be in every store in the city. You'd have the exclusive on this, or maybe you'd have a lot of churn and be able to do well. So that's how we positioned. And so we were able to win them over time by doing these simple things. Again, not being, if they can't see you, they can't see you. Let me just leave you this, and you just live to play another day. You don't argue with them. You don't say you need to buy. No, we just move along. We keep going.
Yeah.
So that worked out very well, and that went from, I can't remember the exact numbers. I think the whole territory did 250,000 when I took it over, and if I'm estimating the commissions right, it was a $10 million territory in 4 years, something like that.
Yeah, nice.
And and then so that kind of got us there. And a couple of things I learned along the way that some of the chapters really hit me more than others. And what I think is really, if somebody's tell me what's the one thing, it's taking ownership when business problems arise. So in the food business, if something didn't get on the truck, you got to go get it. Get in your car, the factory, pick it up and deliver it. Don't ask questions. It's nobody's fault. What was your role in it? How can you do better next time? And then figure it out. And that lesson was given to me by this guy Jimmy Gallagher in the food business. He was a kind of a joker, like real guy that would needle you all the time. You drink a beer with him, he's laughing, he's making fun of you, especially the young kid and all that. But you got him in front of a chef, he transformed. He was just a pro's pro. He knew his products. He could recite. I gave you a couple of numbers off out of the book. He didn't even look at the book. He just wrote them in a Mead notebook as they were calling them out. He knew all the code numbers. Now you do it long enough. As a matter of fact, I can give you a few more, but it's not that impressive. I can't remember what happened yesterday. But he's the one who told me, if I get one thing across to you, whenever anything goes wrong, start here. What was my role? How could have I done better? Right. So then you're not lashing out at people and being the victim, right? What could I have done better? And that way you're less likely to make the mistake again. Right? Because if in fact you did make the mistake, and if you didn't make the mistake, you're looking for a negotiated settlement somewhere along the line. I'll give you a great bar example on this. So this buddy of mine, we were working the bar one night. His name is Dennis Mayer, and all the names are protected in the book. I didn't use any of their real names, and so Dennis was too smart to be working for us. It was like, you're hanging out with us. This is you should be doing something else. And this woman asked for a vodka martini, very dry. So Dennis made her a vodka martini straight up, very dry, as he always did. Comes back, not dry enough. Now, what's Dennis to do? Dennis, who'd been doing this for 10 or 15, at least 10 years at the time, says to me, I've never put a drop of vermouth in a martini, ever. It's always straight booze. But what did he do? Put the mixing glass down in front of her, grabbed the vodka bottle, poured it, shook it, or stirred. I don't know if he was James Bond or shaken, not stirred. I'm not sure. And he poured it right in front of her. And she took a sip. She goes, "That's the one." So what should he have done? So the bar lost the drink.
Right.
The cost of goods back then was probably 50 cents. This is 40 years ago. And he retains the customer. He looks like the hero, and everybody's happy. So he took the ownership, even though it wasn't his doing. So, and that's what we do. We do that a lot. We always make sure you look at it. What did I do? And typically we're pretty comfortable with how we do business, that we don't make wild mistakes because we've just been doing it too long. But if we do, we take ownership. But we always take the position. I had this discussion with a friend of mine the other day. He says, he stayed in the restaurant business. He was a restaurant manager for a while, and he's read the book, and he contributed too. And he says, the customer isn't always right. I said, you're not going to win me over on that. Because if you start from that premise, then the defense comes right out of the gate, right? It's like if you say the customer's always right, yet listen well, two ears, one mouth, right? Use them in that proportion. Find out what the beef is, take some ownership, come up with a solution, and everybody's happy. But if you start with the customer isn't always right, if you're telling your people on the floor or your sales guys or whatnot, not a good way to start, because you're in that you're combative right out of the gate. That wasn't my fault. That was you. Why could so it's just not a good place to be. So
Right.
that's what the whole taking ownership thing. And those are some of the things that I find about, and these are all the things you think about in retrospect. It's like, and if there's an R1 on this book, it's going to be every chapter is going to be associated with some old adage and or one that I make up, right?
Right.
I mean, you might be able to guess the importance of a proper greeting. You get one shot to make a first impression, right?
Right.
So,
So that brings me to the question. I see this as twofold. Before, and we haven't even mentioned it, but Bar Tips is the name of the book, and I'm gonna have the link in the show notes and everything for anyone that wants to grab that. But I see basically two different groups of people that this is a really valuable book for. But who did you write this book for?
well, the first reason I wrote it was so I didn't go crazy during COVID. Number one.
Right.
It just so happens that during COVID, while I was writing it, a friend of mine had talked about his son. His friend is very successful. He's got a lovely family, and he was always talking about his son Joe. And I said, "Listen, let me talk to him." Because I know from where I speak, based on my fits and starts and swings and misses and all that, he hadn't been successful at any sales endeavor yet. I listened to some of the sales endeavors, and he was set up for failure, so it was not a good spot to begin with. And so we got to chatting, and so we took him through, and I think this is up your alley. We have a little process that we call positive activity that we've actually trademarked the name. Positive activity is the process, the practice, because we're also, my wife and I are yogi people. The practice, because nothing's perfect. It's not a perfect practice of getting your mindset right. I think this is right in your wheelhouse, to get your mind in a place of positivity, right? So that opens your mind up to open-minded, solution-provided, divergent thinking, creativity. You see solutions, you don't see problems. So if your mind is right, you now can think straight, and that's going to take you to productivity. And if you do this process, I say stick with this for 90 days, this whole little process, because it's a business, it's the mindset piece, and then there's a business development piece. Stick with this for 90 days. Activity begets activity. Stay at it. When you look back, because there's a multiplier effect that you don't even see. You can feel the roll coming as you're putting out requests for quotes, and or you're getting requests for quotes, and you're soliciting people, and you're networking, and you're doing all these things. And you look up 90 days later, you go, I got something going here now. Because you've also decided, and again in the process, is you decided you've got a product that people can buy. You know who can buy it. You start putting lists together of who those people might be, right? And then you systematically market to them. You have a process to follow up on everyone you meet. So you need to, that is the group you know, which is your friends, your family, your business associates, all that. The group you meet, you network at a party, at a charity event, whatnot. What's your systematic? And then finally, and the least appealing is the group you buy. Although you think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, because nary a day goes by where someone isn't soliciting me from LinkedIn to sell me a list. It's like,
Right.
I've been doing this for 27 years. We're in the referral business, right? And so what is your structured way to follow up? So back to Joe for a second. What we had Joe doing, and to answer your question properly, we had Joe doing the positive activity stuff. So, which is gratitude practice, sound familiar? Meditation, move your body, random act of kindness, right? Simple things like that every day.
Yeah.
So he started to do those things. He'd make sure he walked his dog every day for 4 or 5 miles. He meditated. Guy had never meditated, and so he didn't go in the direction of sales, but it opened up his mind to look at other things, and he found a great job with LBL, the financial LBL. Is it LBL? It's a financial group, and he's doing great. And oh, by the way, he married, and not that we had anything to do with who he was marrying. He was dating this woman at the time, married this lovely woman, just a really appealing gal. But so he was always in my head, he was the primary, the primary person that you can help. That these are the things that you've got, these things, you recognize that, your mother told you, that, I mean, again, going back to the old adages, or the overarching governing piece of the book is the golden rule. So whenever you sit there and you've got a choice, how would you like this to be done to you? How would you like to be served? How would you like to be talked to? Right? So, and then, in each one, again, with these things, how do you feel when a salesman, or you go in and somebody's disorganized? You're not real confident in, right? So, I mean, all these little things, what's your attitude like? What's your aptitude? Are you upgrading your skills? How do you look? Right? Are you dressing properly? Are you dressing to succeed? You cannot be overdressed or overeducated, says Thomas Jefferson. Right? So,
yeah.
So that's primary. But I think as I evolve on the thing, and I think back more on it, I think it's a hell of a recruiting tool for restaurant associations to solicit the youth to come and work in restaurants, to make it a point to get a job in a restaurant or bar or wherever, hotel, retail. I mean, if you want to make money, you want to make tips and all that, you go to the restaurants. But anything where you're working directly with the public. So I think it's for that. I think it's great for anybody that's even successful today and needs, in sales or in business, to sharpen up their soft skills. The things that you forget. You become a hot commodity, and now you forget all about where you came from. It doesn't fly.
Well, that's interesting that you brought that up as well, because I said there's 2 different avatars that I see that this book is for, and one was that the person with experience that needs to refresh or just needs a reminder or whatever. And then I think it's just an incredible tool for these young adults that are just getting into their careers. And so, yeah, who I see this as an incredible tool for is exactly who you hit on there.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, again, so the book is Bar Tips, and it's got some incredible tips in there that come from some incredible experiences that have made you successful in many different areas of your life. But share where people can find you, where they can follow you. Like I said, I'm going to put all these links in the show notes. They'll be able to find the link to the book there and everything. But people that want to know more about it, more about what you do, more about the programs you have, just share that with us as well.
I can be reached at my website for the book and the program, the positive activity program, is positiveactivity.net. Positiveactivity.net. And it's also where there's a link on the book, tells a little bit about the book, and then the link to Amazon.
If there's someone that's in their vehicle listening to this or something, Instagram is where I'm usually at. So author Neil Rogers is where you can find him on Instagram, and then all the links to everything else will be in the show notes so that you can find that. And again, the link to the book and everything. And again, the book is bar tips. Everything I needed to know in sales, I learned behind the bar. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate you being with us and really wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was a blast.
Athletes put a lot of time, money, and effort into the physical aspect of their sport, but they often neglect the mental game. And the mental game, it's just as important as the physical. In fact, it's often the differentiating factor between good and great athletes. If you really want to reach your full potential, if you want to be a great athlete, you've got to pay attention to the mental game. Now, come and join us in the Confident Athlete program, where you're going to learn how to develop powerful mindset, extreme self-confidence, and really take your game to the next level. Come and check us out at confidentathleteprogram.com/membership. Are you ready to become the go-to expert in your industry? Take your business and your life to new heights? I'm Jeff Hagan. I want to introduce you to the Entrepreneur Coaching Group. In the Entrepreneur Coaching Group, we're going to show you exactly how to do that. But just as important, in the Entrepreneur Coaching Group, you're going to mastermind with other like-minded high achievers that's going to help you to push yourself further, to hold you accountable, and to reach new heights. Come and check out the Entrepreneur Coaching Group at coachhagee.com/entrepreneur. Og Mandino said that the difference between those who have failed and those who have succeeded lies in the difference of their habits. Good habits are the keys to success. Many of the habits that'll bring you success in life are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. I developed the Mindset Journal so that I could easily implement powerful success habits into my daily routine. The power of the Mindset Journal comes from knowing your top priorities and scheduling them into your day. The power of the reticular activating system and its relationship to your goals, your mindset questions, and your daily accountability. So if you want to implement some quick and effective success habits into your daily routine, go to jeffhagee.com/mindset journal and get yours today.